What is good without evil? What is light without dark? What's peanut butter without jelly? I don't know. I don't care. And I don't have anything else to come up with. I'm Venom, and this is the Top 10 Makuta. So kicking off this list, we have number 10, Icarax. Icarax can best be described as an arrogant jerk. He's pretty much generally considered to be the most aggressive member of the Brotherhood. He hates complex planning and schemes, so you can kinda guess how he felt about Teridax's incredibly convoluted plot to take over the Mutran universe. He believes in more direct maneuvers, relying on his own power and will to get what he wants. So if he wants a burrito from you, he won't come up with some sort of plan to get it while you aren't looking. No, he'll just freaking take it from your cold, dead hands. And unless you're someone like Teridax, who's probably one of the only Makuta to defeat Icarax in battle, there's a pretty high probability he'll do it with ease. Teridax actually saw some potential in Icarax's attitude and skill, entrusting him with the possession of his Kanohi Krakan until he was in a position to don it again. Icarax is a mighty Makuta deserving to be on the list, but when it comes down to it, he's simply the embodiment of brawn and aggression, and not much else. And there's other Makuta that proved to be much better than that. So, number 9, Bitil. He may be a bit small and lanky, but boy is he a vicious little guy. Bitil is feared by other Makuta to a point where he had been assigned to the Southern Islands, a location where he can be kept practically isolated from the others. Poor little Bitil felt a lack of appreciation from his fellow Makuta, providing him with the ambitious goal of achieving some sort of higher position where his power and skill can be properly recognized by his peers. Isn't that interesting? A powerful, feared Makuta with a sense of redemption. Poor guy. It's too bad he never really accomplished much in the story, otherwise we'd probably place him a bit higher on the list. Ironic how even on this list he can't even get a higher position. Moving on with number 8, Spiria. Spiria was generally disliked by the other Makuta, even so before he went rogue. Yep, that's right. Spiria was the only Makuta to revolt against Teridax's cause and work on his own accord. He was also kind of a big failure and he just never really did anything right, which is why the Brotherhood hated him so much. As much as he aspired to apply himself to become something of higher regard, he blamed the maltreatment from his fellow Makuta for his incompetence, and there was this mindset that set him to go rogue at all. He also hated the heck out of Skakadi, the sentient species he actually watched over for the Brotherhood. Why did he hate them? Because after he mutated the entire species, they went insane and just held some kind of uprising. Yep, he's kinda lame, but that's what makes him such a fascinating character. But not so much as number 7, Melding Universe Teridax. If you always looked at Teridax as a big, mean bully, then this alternate version of his character should probably come off as the complete opposite. Melding Universe Teridax is a calmer, brighter, wiser, and more collected version of his evil counterpart that we're all so familiar with. Also, rather than having the power of shadow, this Teridax is a being of light, being able to manipulate the elements similarly to Takanuva. I think we all know who that is. Alternate Terry was brought into the main Mutran universe from his own universe by Mezica, and while we're not going to delve into the complicated context behind how this happened, we'll definitely acknowledge the fact that he was cool enough to help out in the conflict taking place just before Evil Terry's death. Alternate Teridax, as cool and useful as he was, pales in comparison to what the other Makuta BIONICLE had to offer. Moving on to number 6, Miserix. Ah yes, Miserix. The original leader of the Makuta. During his term, the Brotherhood of the Makuta was still under a pretty positive influence, and their only purpose was to serve the Order of Matanui. Miserix is remarkably intelligent, powerful, feared, and fairly cautious. He also accomplished a couple of things with the Brotherhood under his leadership, but that didn't stop him from being overthrown by a Makuta rebellion led by Teridax. He was then imprisoned for some time until finally being freed by a strike team led by Brutaka. By this time, he sacrificed his inner light to prevent being at a disadvantage in an inevitable conflict with the other Makuta. Under Teridax's rule, the Brotherhood had also done this in order to fully separate themselves from the Order of Matanui and truly enhance their powers. However, this didn't stop Miserix from doing whatever he could to oppose the Brotherhood, forming an alliance with the Order simply because his hatred for Teridax led him to do so. Miserix is a pretty interesting Makuta indeed, but alas, even he can't compare to some of the very Makuta that dethroned him in the first place. With number 5, we have Mutran. Mutran isn't necessarily the most interesting character, being no more than the definitive mad scientist of the Brotherhood, but his intelligence and his abilities in mutation and Rahi formation were decently unparalleled by the other Makuta, besides maybe Chirox. He was responsible for mutating Krika into shadow leeches, a more effective form of the weaponized creatures which were then introduced in the Cardanui storyline. This makes Mutran fairly important, as the Shadow Leeches became the Makuta's primary tool in the Battle of Cardanui, utilizing them to take control of the Mutran and battle the Toa. Heck, they were even used to transform Takanuva into a Toa of Shadow and Light, or Toa of Twilight. Mutran's contributions to the Brotherhood generally proved to be quite effective, however it doesn't make him the best Makuta we have on this list. Number 4, Chirox. An intelligent Makuta skilled in Rahi creation, Chirox may not be as invested in mutation as Mutran, but he's definitely accomplished quite a bit more. While there isn't much to say about his personality aside from some sense of arrogance, Chirox was the creator of the Miserix horde, the very species of Rahi that troubled the Toa Metru in the 2005 storyline. He was also the first to discover the evolution of the Makuta's physiology, completely transforming from solid biomechanical creatures into a fluid-like energy. This discovery gave the Makuta awareness of new capabilities they had developed with the transformation, such as the ability to possess robots, which kinda gave them an edge and proved to be quite important in the Brotherhood's activity. I mean, let's recall the time that Teridax used this ability to possess a Maxillos robot during the 2007 storyline, and Chirox was the one to get this all figured out. But, that's about it. Number 3, we have Gorast, the only female Makuta. Well, at least the only one we know of and or care about. Prior to the Battle of Cardanui, Gorast had been kind of all over the place. She was a cruel character, shown to be extremely violent in nature. However, she was also Teridax's biggest kiss-up. Gorast thoroughly believed in the plan to take over the Mutran universe, to a point where she was the most invested in its execution than any of the other Makuta besides Teridax, of course. She was even there to help Big Terry overthrow Miserix during the rebellion of the Brotherhood. Then, under Terry's orders, she worked with Icarax to hunt down and kill the remaining Makuta who were still loyal to Miserix. This character is just freaking crazy. Like, if there was really a single Makuta to fear, it's freaking her. She would seriously do anything for the plan. Unfortunately, despite her loyalty to Teridax, she too fell victim to the energy storms that he created with the purpose of destroying all Makuta who would possibly oppose his control. In that moment, the moment she realized she had been betrayed, she stood there in complete silence in acceptance of her demise. Dang, that was dark. Oh well, she wouldn't have gotten the next 2 spots anyway. Number 2, Teridax. Haha! You thought he would be number 1? Okay, no, I understand why. Teridax is the big bad of Bionicle. He was the one who overthrew Miserix, the one who led the Grand Rebellion against the Order of Matanui out of spite and jealousy for the power of the Great Spirit, the one Makuta to lead the others into the path of darkness and shadows and all that evil crap. He was present throughout all 10 years of Bionicle's original story and is the most recognizable villain in the line's history. He is the Makuta, but he isn't necessarily the best Makuta. Terry is so great because in the time he's spent being a part of Bionicle's story, he's been consistently active in executing his plan to take over the Mutran universe. He pulled so many strings and made so many revisions to get his plan set in motion and in succession, but despite this, he still ultimately failed. Why? Because he is a very flawed character. He's arrogant, proud, and narcissistic, and oftentimes these characteristics overshadowed his logic and ambition. Even his alternate universe counterpart pointed out to Terry that his dark side was basically restricting his capabilities. However, Teridax isn't actually as much of a one-dimensional character or as superficial as he seems to be. As a matter of fact, he can be quite vague in his intentions and kind of confusing, which makes him successfully manipulative, and it also makes him interesting enough as a villain. However, being the big bad evil guy isn't everything when it comes to being a great Makuta, especially if your motivation is purely just jealousy. Because, I mean, when it all came down to it, that's all this guy was about. He was jealous. He was a jealous wreck. So, with number 1, we have Krika. Nah, we didn't just pick him because he looks cool. I mean, that's part of it, but when it comes down to it, all the Makuta on this list, aside from Melding Universe Teridax, are more or less the same kind of character. Evil, angry, arrogant, just all around mean-spirited. Sure, they have their unique traits that warrant giving each of them a separate placement on this list, but we aren't rating the biggest, baddest Makuta. We want the best, most interesting Makuta character the BIONICLE had to offer. The one that stuck out the most in a fairly monotonous roster of antagonistic characters. And that's Krika. Why? Because he isn't really big or bad like the others. When the Brotherhood revolts erupted, Krika joined Teridax's cause fairly hesitantly, not so much because he believed in the plan, but because he believed that after the rebellion that his fate had just been sealed along with the other Makuta. Basically, he went with the flow. He went wherever the wind carried him, if that makes a bit more sense. Heck, when he was ordered by Teridax to kill Miserix, he instead chose to leave him alive and imprison him on Icarax. He didn't share the more evil intentions that the other Makuta had. He was empathetic, honorable, merciful, and as a matter of fact, he was envious of the Toa Nuva. He wanted to be on the path of good, but he knew the circumstances of his role in life prevented him from doing so. He knew how his life was going to end just because he was a Makuta. He practically had an identity crisis. Heck, he even warned the Toa Nuva to leave Cardanui before they risked facing the results of the plan, which he knew would require their involvement. Ultimately, he wanted to help, but he couldn't. He's a complicated character, he's relatable, and thus, we threw him out as the number 1 Makuta on this list. But that's just our thoughts. What are yours? Post your top 10 Makuta in the comments below. I'm Venom, and I thank you for watching.